Most men seem confident when they interact with older women. They flirt, enjoy their time together, and sometimes even fall in love. On the surface, it all looks effortless. But behind that confident mask lies secret fears. I believe women over 60 deserve to know the truth. Because once you understand it, you'll view love and relationships in a completely new way. People often assume men only fear rejection or commitment. Yet something much deeper stirs when a man stands before a woman who has truly lived, gathered wisdom through decades, and carries a quiet strength within her. Age doesn't diminish beauty. In many ways, it deepens it, and that depth can unsettle some men. They recognize that women over 60 have seen enough to know their own worth. Welcome back to Journey After 60. Today, we're lifting the veil on the 3 secret fears men have about older women. Fears that make them hesitate, because when a man meets a woman who knows her worth, his usual strategies no longer work. For many, that kind of authenticity feels intimidating. Before we dive in, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel. That way, we can continue exploring the hidden truths of dating, relationships, and the quiet wisdom that makes love so powerful in the later years of life. Number 1. The fear of no longer being impressive. There's a quiet fear that creeps in for many men when they sit across from a woman who has lived long enough to know what truly matters. I've noticed it in the way their words stumble when a clever line falls flat, or how they shift uncomfortably when material achievements don't earn the reaction they expect. The fear is simple but powerful. What if nothing they do is enough to impress you? From a young age, men are taught that their value lies in what they can show. Success, possessions, charm, all tools meant to win admiration. And for much of their lives, these tools work. But older women, especially those in their 60s and beyond, have already seen the suits, the cars, the bragging rights. They've raised families, built lives, faced challenges that no trophy or promotion can outshine. They're not dazzled by shallow displays. They're attuned to substance. I once came across a survey by the American Institute for Relationships in 2020, which revealed that nearly 70% of men admitted they felt more pressured to prove themselves to older women than to younger ones. One man confessed, "With younger women, I can lean on status or stories. With older women, it feels like they've already heard it all. They see past the performance." His words echoed a truth many men hesitate to admit. A woman seasoned by life cannot be impressed by glitter. She's looking for integrity, consistency, and respect. I remember talking to an older gentleman, Richard, in his early 70s. He admitted that after his divorce, he felt anxious about dating women his age. When I was younger, I could walk into a room, talk about my job, my travels, and women seemed interested. Now, when I share those same things, women my age just nod politely. Some even look bored. It makes me feel invisible. He said the word invisible with a kind of quiet sadness, and I could feel the weight behind it. For a man who built his identity around being admired, the realization that admiration no longer comes so easily was devastating. And yet, this is exactly why the fear runs so deep. It strips away the easy armor men have relied on for decades. Without the ability to impress with status or charm, they feel vulnerable, forced to reveal character instead of performance. Some retreat from that challenge, help others rise to it, learning that authenticity is more magnetic than any polished facade. For women over 60, this is not a burden, but a strength. Your standards are not shallow, they are profound. You no longer ask to be entertained, you ask to be seen, respected, and met with truth. And while that may intimidate some men, it also filters out the ones who aren't ready for something real. Because the man who stays, even when he knows he can't dazzle you, is the one who's willing to offer you what lasts, himself, unmasked and genuine. Number 2, the fear of no longer being needed. What happens to a man's identity when the very thing he believes gives him value is no longer required? For many men, the thought of being needed is not just comforting, it is central to how they define themselves in love. But when they meet a woman over 60, a woman who embodies independence, wisdom, and decades of lived experience, that old foundation begins to shake. Tradition and society have taught generations of men that their worth lies in protecting, providing, and being indispensable to women. In many cultures, a man's status has been measured by how much a woman depends on him. But with older women, that framework no longer holds. Women in their 60s are often financially independent, socially connected, and grounded in a clear philosophy of life. They have weathered challenges on their own, raised children, rebuilt after loss or divorce, and discovered that they don't need saving. What they seek is not rescue, but partnership. Someone to walk beside them, to share intimacy and companionship. For men who are accustomed to proving themselves through the role of protector or provider, this independence can be disorienting. A 2022 eHarmony survey found that more than 70% of single men between 35 and 55 preferred dating younger women, precisely because it made them feel more important and relied upon. The numbers tell a clear story. Many men still tie their self-worth to being needed. So when they step into a relationship with a woman who already has her own foundation, they must bring something different. Not control or provision, but emotional depth, equality, and authenticity. This shift forces men to ask themselves, if love is no longer about rescuing or playing the hero, then what is it? The answer is harder, but more rewarding. It is presence, companionship, and honest connection. For men who have never experienced this kind of relationship, it can feel like stepping into uncharted territory. And yet, this is the beauty of mature love. An independent woman doesn't stay because she has to. She stays because she chooses to. That choice makes the bond harder to win, but far more enduring. The fear men carry in this case is not a warning sign, it is a filter. It reveals who only wants love when they feel depended upon, and who is capable of loving as an equal. A man who truly values you will not feel diminished by your independence. On the contrary, he will see it as an invitation to walk alongside you, shoulder to shoulder, in a partnership built on respect. And perhaps that is one of the greatest lessons of love after 60. Love is no longer about clinging or completing each other. It is about friendship, freedom, and mutual choice. So before we move on to the final hidden fear, let me ask you, have you ever seen a man pull away because he felt he wasn't needed enough? Share your story in the comments. It may inspire other women to embrace their independence without guilt. And now, let's explore the last unspoken fear, one that reaches beyond self-worth into the deeper territory of power, boundaries, and authority that some men quietly struggle to surrender. Number 3, the fear of losing power. One of the hardest truths for some men to accept is that women over 60 are no longer afraid of being alone. They've built lives, raised families, endured heartbreak, and discovered that joy, fulfillment, and even wholeness can be found without a man by their side. This realization shifts the balance of power in relationships, and for men who have leaned on authority or control, it feels as if the ground beneath them has suddenly cracked. Think about how many younger relationships unfold. A woman in her 20s or 30s might overlook mixed signals, confusion, or even disrespect because she's still learning to set boundaries. But older women have lived through those stages. They know when to walk away from an unfulfilling relationship. And they've proven to themselves that solitude is not frightening. That hard-earned strength is exactly what many men secretly fear. A 2020 Psychology Today report found that women over 40 were nearly twice as likely to end an unsatisfying relationship compared to women under 30. They carry a list of boundaries that are not only clear, but non-negotiable. For men who are used to maintaining control through silence, inconsistency, or manipulation, that kind of decisiveness is deeply unsettling. I once knew a couple in their 60s, James and Brenda. They had been dating for 2 years when conflict began to surface over respect. James had been accustomed to holding the final word, something that had defined his decades-long marriage before. But Brenda was different. She listened, she discussed, and then calmly made her own decisions. When she felt dismissed, she didn't argue endlessly. She simply said, "I will not be treated this way," and stepped back. Within weeks, James realized that the tactics of control that had once worked no longer held any power. Brenda was willing to walk away. In the end, he adjusted. He learned that if he wanted her in his life, it required respect, equality, and humility. Their relationship survived, but only because he chose partnership over power. Stories like this reveal why the fear of losing control cuts so deep. For many men, control has been their shield against insecurity. If they could steer the relationship, they didn't have to face their own vulnerability. But with older women, that shield is stripped away. Power games, manipulative silence, and inconsistent affection lose their effect. Instead, men find themselves face to face with a woman who knows her worth, refuses mistreatment, and isn't afraid to start again if necessary. The issue isn't that women want to dominate men. It's that they refuse to shrink themselves for the sake of harmony. Older women are clear. They will not sacrifice respect just to keep companionship. That clarity forces men to decide whether they can meet them on equal ground. For women listening, this fear is not a burden you carry. It is a reflection of how far you've come. The power to walk away is not harshness, it is freedom. And men who fear losing power often fail to see that real love was never about power at all. It's about presence, honesty, and mutual respect. When I think about this fear, I see it as both a challenge and an invitation. For men, it's the challenge to grow beyond control. For women, it's the invitation to stand tall in your truth. Because love after 60 doesn't ask you to be smaller, quieter, or easier to manage. It asks you to be fully yourself. And only the right man will have the courage to meet you there. Looking back at these three fears, the fear of no longer being impressive, the fear of no longer being needed, and the fear of losing power, I hope you see something important. None of these fears mean that you are too much or too difficult. They reflect men confronting their own insecurities when faced with the strength, wisdom, and clarity that women over 60 naturally carry. When this truth sinks in, you stop mistaking a man's fear for your fault. You no longer ask yourself whether you should soften, shrink, or silence parts of who you are just to make someone else feel secure. Instead, you begin to see your independence, your emotional wisdom, and your firm boundaries for what they truly are. Not barriers to love, but the compass that points you toward it. These qualities don't push the right man away. They quietly clear the path, removing those who are unready and leaving space for someone who can meet you as an equal. Love after 60 is not about becoming smaller to soothe someone else's discomfort. It's about standing tall, trusting that the right man won't be intimidated by your strength. He will be drawn to it. He will see your wisdom not as a threat, but as a gift. So if these reflections spoke to you, I invite you to like this video and subscribe to my channel. Together, we'll keep uncovering the quiet truths that make love in our later years not only possible, but profoundly meaningful. Thank you for being here today. See you in the next video.